It's Wednesday evening, February 25th, 2026. It's the day after I was handed a letter by the Family Violence and Sexual Assault Unit that they would no longer be aiding me and I was not permitted on the premises anymore. And it was supposedly because I pose a danger. And I think that's the most hurtful part of all of it. I also think it's okay if we need to cry sometimes. I've done an awful lot of healing work and come a long way in the last 3 years since I left my abusive husband, who at the time I had no idea was a false marriage. A marriage that's now 28 years long, because the divorce is still not final, if there's a divorce to be had. I've come a long way. I've done a lot of work, and I'm so glad I have, because if I had not done the healing work and gotten my internal self situated, there's really no way I would be able to handle the re-traumatization of something like being accused falsely by a domestic abuse help center. It's not a shelter. I think if they would want to only spend, let's say they wanted to have a cap of how much they spent annually or altogether on any one particular client, if they wanted to cap it at 500 or 1,000, so that they did not spend too much money or what they deemed to be too much money on any one given person, that they could do that they could say, we have spent this much money to help you and we just really can't help you anymore. I would think they could at least say something like that if they really wanted to be done with the client. But it's crosses all kinds of borders of wrongness to just completely falsify and make the woman who has been victimized by, her husband, and often by the family that she was, like in my case, the family that she was raised in. So all this person has known is harm, unfortunately, and it's wrong. It's so wrong to make her be a villain when she isn't one, when she actually embodies love. And these people are very calloused, and it's just like a very underhanded, like a sucker punch. It really, and it was shocking and hurt yesterday, and there's been several times in the last today and yesterday that I kind of felt like, yeah, I could really cry. But at first I was in public over where it had just happened, and then I went to a small park by the library, and then I went into the library because it was cold. It's been cold. And then sometimes, we might feel like we could cry and we just busy ourselves with things. So today I've been trying to get my tree, which I know there's supposed to be more rain tomorrow, and when we had rain last week, I had pretty much a drenched inside of my tree. And the tree is porous, but I know it's also because it's just really hard to get a tarp wrapped around when you have like 3 big trunks. It's like 3 trees. That's what it looks like from the top, but it's has a hollowed base, so it's a misshapen. It reminds me of myself a little bit. I've thought about that, how this tree has at best a rocky foundation, right? Like, meaning it's not even all there. It's missing a huge, it's hollow. I'm inside of it. It's kind of like a half hollowed, yeah, it's kind of like having a dysfunctional background. But there, from the outside, it still isn't normal, because I guess if it was normal, instead of having 3 trunks, one is larger than the other 2, but it would be 1 trunk, and it would be a lot more, solid and sturdy. And they're very tall, way, way tall, but it grew despite whatever happened to cause it to become hollow and misshapen. I'm not sure what would have done that, but it grew strong anyway. And here it is. I have thought about that many times because I even wrote a poem about it, like, almost like I've, because of the way I was led to the tree, because I would have never known this was here. I kind of thought, you know, if trees have a spirit of some sort, a nature spirit of some sort, I've just kind of have said, did you know when you were like going through whatever, like it was so you could help me? And then I've kind of thought about that with myself because I do feel like very much the things I've gone through are not just because of me or because, they are because neglectful parents and abusive parents and spouse and those kind of things. But there's a reason, despite and above that, there's a reason far greater to be able to have just a huge amount of empathy and connectability that I really can, and I can see how being homeless now is helping me more with that, but I really can relate to probably almost any kind of person out there. I love all kinds of music. I say I don't like country, but actually at the store yesterday there was country playing when I was in the checkout line, and I was sure you wouldn't have known I don't like country. I was sure bopping around to it, and I actually took notice of that, but I can really probably relate to all kinds of people, rich, poor, it doesn't matter the color, and that's the way I see it, as a color. I don't truly believe, I mean, it's fine to say racist, that's what we say, but I feel like it's a good thing, if you come from a certain land and where there's certain customs, it's good to be rooted in that way. If you're from America, and I feel like maybe if you're a Caucasian, more so than if you are something else, you might not really have much of a root base to kind of grasp onto. At this point, I don't know if I'm adopted. I've always thought I was Irish, English, and German, but I may not be. But beyond that, beyond color and beyond race, I can really just relate to a lot of people. I have a hardest time, I guess, relating to people who are heartless, and I think that's a good thing. It's hard for me to understand how people can be. I understand being angry or even feeling jaded or something, but it's hard for me to understand how people, especially people who choose to be in a line of work where you're supposed to be helping people who have been victimized, that you would be so calloused or just so flippant and just not really care. That's really hard for me because I care and I don't have those positions. I care and I don't have a degree. I'm not employed in I'm not employed at all right now, but it's just really hard for me to comprehend. It's also very hard for me to comprehend the things that have been done to me, and I don't say it from a place of woe is me, but I really have only known by intuition in the last year, when I was hunted and I ended up going to jail unjustly. I was fleeing people who were literally hunting me. They were armed, and there were people that I did not know except for one that I recognized, and he was a church young adult that would be one of my children's ages. And anyway, as I was in jail and realized that I had escaped a very huge attempt on my life, started being able to piece the puzzle together that I was in a false marriage, that my parents had set me up and paid a hitman kind of person to be my husband. And I would say after I got out of jail, I started really understanding more about siphoning through sex magic, and things like that. Here comes the train. Anyway, I was just saying that one thing that's been extremely hard for me to understand would be the severity of the kind of things that have been done to me, like putting your child into some form of MK Ultra since infancy and putting her in a situation to be used in child porn and profiting off of it financially, and as the parents molesting and allowing others to molest openly, and just the sacredness of life being absent, basically. You think of abortions versus having a child, but to have a child and then treat it that way is probably worse, because an aborted child can't, they're not alive to feel the pain. And so it's only been in the last year, and maybe barely even that long, that I've come to understand, like, my parents and kind of the severity of the way I've been treated. I just didn't know. And maybe so my dad is more openly abusive, and I really always kind of saw my mom as the victim. And I would have not known my mom was actively, like, hiring hitmen to date me and try to take me out. And that my sisters, I knew my sisters, I felt like they had trauma like me, and they just were very unhealed. I didn't know that they were predatory and making money off of me starring in porn at the marital house all these years after the house I grew up in, having cameras in my bedroom and possibly somehow connected to the TV, but filming outward. And really all of this is just premonitions, downloads. It's hard, to realize that the people that I have loved the most, like my family, are vampires and actually consume human bodies, and that there really isn't anything that these people wouldn't do for gain, whether it's money or whether it's something of even more value, which would be our energy. And this is a very gross problem, meaning a very large problem. It's basically these people have their hands in every pot there is, in every town, in every state, in every country, and every business, or as many businesses as possible. They have their hands in everything so they can manipulate, and it's hard to accept. It's hard to understand, accept it as true, but it's hard to wrap your mind around that there are, like, people in a lot worse predicament than me living in this tree and cold. There are people who are, like, being trafficked right now that are living in some literal underground tunnel, being treated probably worse than we would know that, like, African slaves were treated here in the Americas. And it's all about energy harvesting, using sex, including sex with children. And it's about, whether it's pornography or rape, but it's about, like, filming this debauchery and selling it on the black web. And it's also about harvesting organs and truly, like, slaughtering people. And they're actually eating most of the person, but then maybe, like, the heart, or I don't know what other organs, but kidneys and hearts and things that can be sold like that are being marketed. And it's like this whole huge organized crime scandal, and it's so enormous. And it is also using people, like I have been, stealing and siphoning, using, like, false spouses, people who don't really love them, but the person in the relationship doesn't know, just like I didn't. And they're siphoning your energy for years and years, decades. And it's also being used to, like, fuel people who are, quote, famous, like stars, that we think of stars that are famous, like Beyonce or Oprah, or any of the plethora of actors and actresses and singers and rappers. It's being used, the sacral energy of innocence, children and adults who possess a certain quality, a certain star quality like myself. It's being siphoned and used. And I have recovered and reclaimed my personhood and my sacral energy. And basically, I have been a huge amount of what the Illuminati have been feeding off of, and they are coming to an end, and all of this is coming out public. And so it's okay that this domestic violence center here in Emporia, Virginia, has officially terminated their dealings with me, because it just matches what the truth is. I knew they did not care about me. I had felt that very much. But now it's official. The thing that is almost like that they would not own their official rejection or disregard of me, that they have to have what looks like a, good legal reason, probably, so that nobody will sue them later. And so the way they go about doing that is just completely making up that this person poses a danger. It's just completely fabricated. And I know that. And I know that the spirit world knows that. And I know it was a foolish move on their case. I'm not going to do anything to anybody, but they will pay for it. I will sue them. But it's going to get handled in the spirit realm. And motives matter. And it's not okay just to say, this person is a danger, this person poses risk to our clientele, we cannot help them anymore. Like, it's not okay to say that when there's no basis for that in any way, shape, or form. Just so you can dust your hands and be done helping them. Maybe your company has spent more than you would like on helping them. But the thing is the donations keep flowing in, because these places, I took a picture at the library when I was there yesterday after the incident happened. There was stacks and stacks of their brochures on every end cap of the library where all the different books were. It was a lot. And I was pondering that as I was walking home yesterday, home to the tree. And it's a good little walk. Probably, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes. And I was, that's one way I communicate with spirit, is kind of, it can be in what seems like posing a question to myself, very much. And I was like, yeah, I think the reason the stacks of brochures are here and there, and it makes it look like they're a great place to donate to if you'd want to help women or children who are leaving a violent situation. And that is truly why they're advertising. That's what it's really about. It's about money. And that's sad. That's saddening.